Good evening. Welcome to version number 2 of the OpenLab intro session. My name's Jessie Rice Evans. I'm the OpenLab manager. I use she or they pronouns. And I'm just going to take us through some slides tonight. We're going to look at examples of work that folks at the other CUNY colleges that use the OpenLab have done on their campuses and with their with cool sites and projects that they've been developing, just to kind of give us an idea of like what's possible for what we could build out on the SPS OpenLab. And we'll talk a little bit too about what's different about the OpenLab than the existing stuff that we have access to at SPS, and just like some possibilities for y'all to think about. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I just have to figure out which one it is. Too many tabs. Okay, there we go. Okay. So the first page that I want to show you here is actually just a screenshot of the OpenLab at CityTech's homepage. The reason why I wanted to show this, even though it's really simple and actually a website that you could type into your browser and access right now, I just kind of wanted to highlight some features that I think are really unique to the OpenLab. A couple things that I want to note here are like right up at the top here, we've got this slider image across the top. This can be a fun way to just kind of integrate more visual elements. And there's all kinds of options for like how you want to lay out different visual or multimedia components on your site that you would be building on the OpenLab. So, and that's integrated throughout the whole site. And there are lots of opportunities for building in more pretty aspects to the design of your site. And underneath the slider, we have these 4 columns: courses, projects, clubs, portfolios. Those are like the big categories of content that you're going to see on the OpenLab at CityTech. The BMCC OpenLab is a little different, and our version of the OpenLab will also be a little different. But this kind of gives us an idea of how stuff is grouped and categorized on the OpenLab. The cool thing, I think, about the way that these 4 categories are displayed on the homepage is they're actually ordered by like what's most recently active. So the reason that this particular course, project, club, and portfolio are up here is because when I took the screenshot, these were the projects that were being worked on right then. The administrators of those sites were in there making a new post or editing something. And so every time I come to the homepage on the OpenLab, there's different content depending on what's being worked on actively right then. Similar to what you would see in like a social media algorithm. So it can be kind of cool just to like hit refresh and see if new stuff comes up, especially at the beginning of the semester. Like every single time you go to the OpenLab homepage, it's like a brand new set of stuff, which is really cool to see. They also have this in the spotlight feature, which is featured really prominently on the homepage, so that they can draw attention to something like an announcement about a software update or something happening at the college, something to really that like would draw folks' attention, that can be featured on the homepage in the slider or in a spotlight category. I'll take us to the BMCC OpenLab homepage. Looks really similar, as you can see, and has the same function of like whatever's most recently active is going to show up on the homepage. And I also really like that they've included down on the left-hand side, they've included this kind of section for new members. So when folks sign up, it will announce like so-and-so is new to the OpenLab, say hello, which I think is a cool way to kind of build some community for folks who are already there, welcoming new folks. There is a kind of social element. You can like add friends and send messages on the OpenLab. So stuff that I want to talk about today are really, I was trying to come up with some kind of framing questions for us. And I really want us to think about how the OpenLab can help us improve the user experience for students, staff, and faculty, everybody at SPS. I also want us to think about how we can use the Open Lab to connect, collaborate, and build stuff within the SPS community. So like maybe somebody you're taking a class with, or you want to work with somebody in a different office. And then I think it's important that we remember that the Open Lab is not, because it is built at CUNY, we have a really rich community of people who have already been using the space and have already done a ton of work to make thorough documentation and provide robust support. They have a lot of knowledge from working on this project for over 10 years at City Tech. So I think using that to our advantage and really appreciating what other folks have done and using that as a jumping off point is really crucial for us. A little bit of background about the Open Lab. It's developed at City Tech in collaboration with a bunch of folks from across CUNY involved in open digital pedagogy. And the principles of open digital pedagogy were really, really central to thinking about the Open Lab. I've highlighted some of those here, but the ones that I really wanted to draw our attention to were the mobile responsiveness of the Open Lab. The Open Lab works really well on mobile devices, and it's been optimized to work well on mobile devices because of the students at City Tech in particular use mobile devices to access the Open Lab a lot of the time. So that's been a really big focus for the development team to make sure that the site runs really well on even like a small smartphone screen, to tablet, to whatever other kinds of device folks might be using to get online. So that's a really crucial piece. You can actually log in and build your site from your phone, which is really, really cool. Another thing that I really like about the Open Lab that I wanted to highlight is students and everybody who is a member of the SPS community gets access to the Open Lab. But what's really cool is everybody gets like a default web space that you can kind of fill and build out. And it's really yours to do kind of what you want with it. In addition to the space that comes with your account, you can always create a new site, even as a student, even as somebody who works part-time at SPS. You don't have to be a full-time student or full-time faculty or staff or anything like that to get involved, create a site, use the resources that are available on the site to learn more about WordPress, and to develop your site and collaborate with other folks. And even to go on and see what other people are doing. The whole site's public facing by default. There are options if you want to kind of close down the privacy of your site a little bit more, but the open by default practice is a really central aspect of the Open Lab. We want to be able to see and appreciate and value the work that other folks are doing at the college. So being able to see all of that work in the open is really crucial. Really, we're hoping for the SPS Open Lab to be a place for us to build the SPS community. Since so many of us aren't physically in New York City and can't come in person, even if that was an option. We want to make sure that there's spaces for folks to connect and collaborate outside of these really formal kind of classroom spaces like we have on Blackboard. So that's one of the big visions that we're thinking about with bringing the Open Lab is more like community-based space instead of a lot of, you know how on Blackboard, you like when you're the administrator of the space, you have to give permission for anybody to be able to even see it. That's not the case on the Open Lab. By default, everything is available to everyone. That doesn't mean you can just come in and like change somebody else's stuff, but I could come in and look at what you're working on at least. I don't know, for me, I would want to see like the course site ahead of time before I enroll in the class as a student, that kind of thing. So I'm hoping that being able to share some of these materials more openly will give folks more opportunities to connect with one another. We also have the something that I like to think about that is a little bit more kind of an undercurrent here is like talking with students and staff and faculty about how to develop and be careful about what kind of identity you want to have online, what kind of digital identity you're creating for yourself. The Open Lab offers a cuny.edu web space that can be attached to your name. That's going to help with search results if you want to put like your resume or other like job materials on your Open Lab space. A lot of students at City Tech have used that space as like an interactive resume when they're applying for jobs or internships, when they're done with programs or moving into the next phase of their careers. So it's been really cool to see what kinds of creative things folks do with the space and how you can use the cuny.edu domain really to your advantage. Helps get you bumped up in those search results, and it can help you figure out how you want to position yourself online. Maybe you want to go back and take down some of those pictures of like going to the parties in your college days and rethink how you want to appear to other people if they're going to search for you. So the big highlight for me of Open Lab, what's really exciting about it is you can build sites, websites, web pages for any kind of thing that you can imagine. It doesn't even really have to be like school related. If you were just like interested in creating like an interest group page where people could share cat memes or something, you could absolutely build a site where anybody who joins could post a cat meme to the site, and it just like brings you joy and is fun. There's options. It doesn't have to be this very formal, strict kind of space. There's some options to kind of play, which I think is really exciting. One thing I did want to talk about in thinking about creating content and posting it on the Open Lab, everything on the Open Lab is covered by what's called a Creative Commons license. If you are into other digital stuff, this might be a familiar concept. If not, that's fine. We'll talk a little bit about it. Creative Commons licenses are a way for you to protect your intellectual work, stuff that you would be posting to the Open Lab. By default, everything on the Open Lab is covered by one specific type of Creative Commons license. It's called the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 4.0 International License. The shortened version of that is a little bit less of a mouthful, but still kind of strange to read if you're unfamiliar with the formatting. It's just kind of shortened down CC by NC SA 4.0. And there's like a little icon that goes with it too. I'll click over here and we can look at it real fast. You may have seen like this before. CC, this guy. All these little icons have meaning, and after you look at them a lot, you start to understand them. So basically what the license means is the particular license that's in use for the Open Lab is really about maintaining authorship and providing opportunities for remixing, revising, repurposing other materials. So basically this license covers us in a few ways. Number one is this requires attribution. The by part of the license, we've got Creative Commons CC by. By means attribution. Attribution means we have to give credit to the person who originally created the stuff. So let's say, Karen, you made a fabulous Open Lab site, and I'm like, wow, Karen did so much work on this. I don't want to have to go back from scratch and like do it all over when it's not going to be as good as yours. So would it be okay if I cloned your site? Then like, if you were to let me do that, then that would give me the opportunity to make a copy of your work and then give you credit for making the original version of that work. I guess I get credit for like making the adaptation, but it's crucial that I make sure to give you credit because you are the original source of that material that I'm using in a slightly different way. Maybe I'm copying your site and then I'm going to customize it a little bit more to meet my specific needs. It doesn't matter because you still built the original site. And so you get credit for that work. There's actually a built-in attribution system on the Open Lab, which is really cool. If you do like clone somebody else's site, then the attribution will appear automatically on the new version, which is awesome. Number two of these categories here, non-commercial. All this really means is you can't take my work that I post on the OpenLab and sell it for money. If I have created something that is going to make a lot of money, I don't know that I'm going to post it on the OpenLab, sorry. But even if I did, you couldn't sell it. So sorry about that. The next requirement of this license is a practice called share alike. What that means is if I am going to use the example from before, if I've made a copy of Karen's site and it's got attribution back to her, what if somebody else wants to make a copy then of my site? I have to be okay with that. Because I have used somebody else's original materials, changed them slightly for my purposes, and put them back out into the universe or the OpenLab, I have to be fine being like, okay, somebody else could take my version of Karen's original site and clone that and make a new project based on that. So that one would have, this is originally from Karen, the middle version is from Jesse, and now the new version is here. So it would like keep track of the original source, and then I think they're called like children, like the children of the original and then the grandchildren. So that would be cool. So with this particular license, I'm required to put the same exact license on the materials that I make out of any materials that somebody else is making. I have to then take the exact same license, this one in this case, apply it to my stuff, and then it's available for other folks too. So there's a few variations on the Creative Commons licenses. Some are a little bit more restrictive, but because the whole site is covered with the Creative Commons license, it opens up opportunities to use Creative Commons licensed materials from other places on the web. There are a few places you can go to find like cool stock photos that are free, that are made available with a Creative Commons license. So there's like a particular way that you attribute those, and then you can use any of those on the OpenLab, which is cool. Free stock photos. If anyone's ever tried to get stock photos, you know it's a pain to find anything that is not very boring and expensive. So let's go into the site a little bit more. I mentioned earlier, there's kind of 4 big categories of content for the OpenLab. The 4 big categories that we're thinking at SPS are projects, clubs, portfolios, and groups. So projects, something like if you're collaborating with folks at in another department at the college, and you want to create a web space where y'all can share files, maybe post reflections or meeting notes, or other relevant stuff, a project might be a good fit for something like that. Grant funded projects are often included in this category over at City Tech and BMCC. So like if you get grant funding for a specific period of time, you can always set up a site that is like designed for that project, that period of time. And then you can also create like a repository with the site of the stuff that you worked on for the project, and it'll live on the OpenLab even once the project timeline has elapsed, which is kind of cool. Clubs is a really cool something I'm really excited about, and actually talked to the Student Association about recently. I'm really eager to see what students can build out using the clubs feature. But basically, clubs don't have to be like a formally recognized SPS club. You could create like an informal club, or an interest group, which might fall more into the groups category. Either way, though, clubs, like you would have access to a web space, you would have access to a spot to like share files, that kind of thing. So it can also be helpful for like managing a club from semester to semester, or like when you have new officers, you can always, as an administrator of a site on the Open Lab, you can always adjust membership settings. And like, if Karen joined my club and then became an officer, I could be like, oh, I can make you a site administrator now, so that you then have access to parts of the site where you could like make a new page or create something or delete something. But everybody who joins the site wouldn't be able to do that kind of thing. I would need to give them special permission in order, not me personally, but like you, the administrator of the site or project would need to give permission to anybody who they wanted to approve to have administrator access as well. That can be really helpful though, jumping from semester to semester for clubs when you have new officers coming in. So you can pretty easily switch over administrative duties as you have new folks joining the club, which is great. Portfolios, I mentioned a little bit. That's the kind of built-in web space that you get when you sign up for an OpenLab account. It's called a portfolio, but it can really kind of be whatever kind of site you want it to be. As I mentioned, I've seen students at City Tech use the portfolio space as like an interactive resume. I've also seen faculty use it as like a teaching portfolio, which, I mean, there's a lot of options for like how you use the space. Finally, groups, we're kind of thinking are like a little bit more informal, more like interest groups, or the cat meme group that I mentioned earlier that I might have to start actually. But just as kind of like a way for folks to connect without necessarily needing the like formal title of like a project or club. It's kind of a fourth like catch-all space right now. So let's look at a few examples of projects and stuff from the other categories that I wanted to highlight for various reasons. This one, really, I've just grabbed some screenshots from projects and other sites that I think do a good job of using certain WordPress features really well. A lot of them are really just very simple features and tools, but they use them effectively. So I'm using them as examples. For example, here, really this custom header at the top of the HSI committee website over at City Tech is really super simple. They just took a picture of themselves and then put in this title HSI up at the top, but it adds a whole new dimension of like a personal touch. You can actually see the people who are on the committee. Maybe you've seen them on the hall or on a Zoom. It's adds a whole new layer than just like some kind of the like built-in stock photos that are available. Like those are fine, but adding a little bit of customization can really go a long way to make your site seem special. So they've done that here and they've really embraced that here. So that's great to see. They also are using this really simple WordPress accessibility tool called Breadcrumbs that basically walks you through the clicks that you've taken to get to where you are. And that's down here. There's just like this little caret arrow guy to indicate like, first I was on the homepage and then I clicked this other page and now I'm here. So that can be really useful if you have a lot of layers of menus or a lot of content on your site, just to help folks stay organized. I wanted to also show a project from BMCC that is developing open educational resources on Black studies. They got some funding a couple of years ago from the Brezzi Initiative, and they've been working on collaborative OERs with students at BMCC, staff at BMCC, and faculty. Full disclosure, I worked on this site and project a little bit when I was working with the Humanities Alliance. But I really like this approach to the site because it's really simple. Again, it's not really doing anything that requires profound technical knowledge or knowing how to code or create your own website. Really, all they've done here is customize this slider on the main page with a few different images. These photos were actually taken by the program director, and so they have the rights to them, and they were willing to post them all to the site and share them, which is great. If you have any amateur photographers in your life, they're a great way to get good content. But it just is like a simple way to make it feel a little bit more personal, to make a really kind of basic design template. It's very white and black. It's very stark and minimal, but just to kind of brighten it up a little bit, get some visual appeal, and make it a little more interesting. I wanted to highlight another little bit from the BSAA project. It's called Black Studies Across the Americas. Some students developed these really incredible in-depth publications, like a full digital magazine, and we were able to host them on that OpenLab site, and they're available for download on that site today. This was one of my favorites, just like the amount of time these students spent designing this and figuring out good ways to embed it into the OpenLab so that it was still accessible. Really, really cool to see. And I just wanted to highlight some of their great work. For clubs, I mentioned earlier, you can always edit member roles on any site that you're an administrator of. So for clubs, I just wanted to use an example of an existing club that has done exactly this. They've actually made sure to display their current academic officers, excuse me, on the main page of the club site. So like, again, with a little photo, and on the site, when you scroll down, there's just like short bios about each of the officers. So there's a little more information about each of them. You can get to know them a little bit. And those people are all administrators of this site. So it's helpful to like have a little, put a face to a name, and to be able to just build some community. People, I'm thrilled that folks are willing to post pictures of themselves online. You don't have to do that, obviously, if that makes you uncomfortable. But for things like for community building stuff and clubs and social stuff, it can be a huge asset just to have a little bit of face, a little bit of a human there. So I really like to see that, and it's great that the students are comfortable enough to share this stuff. Oh, I mentioned different uses for portfolios. One of my colleagues actually used the portfolio space to do her teaching portfolio for her tenure and promotion. So she used her portfolio space on the OpenLab to include student work and her evals and assignments and all that stuff. And she included this cute little Bitmoji of herself. That inspired me to make my own Bitmoji. I don't know about you. Student portfolios also can serve a lot of functions. This student that I chose to highlight from City Tech actually used the portfolio to complete some of their coursework for some of their classes and write reflections about the internship that they were working on. I think that they had to do like a series of blog posts or like a series of writings about their internship, and they chose to do it on the OpenLab. And they organized it using some really simple built-in WordPress tools. So they used categories, and they used some of the available widgets in WordPress to help organize their site so that it's split up into these different categories that you can navigate around into using the menu. So when you are an administrator of a group, you might be a club administrator, or you might be working on a project and have taken on an administrator role in the OpenLab. You have some options for what kinds of tools you want to activate or use. So I'm in what's called the profile right now. And this menu over on the right-hand side, there's a few items I wanted to draw your attention to. There's the discussion item, You may be familiar with like a discussion forum or a discussion board, often used on Blackboard. We see these all over the web though. You can always start a discussion board within the group that you're the administrator of. And those function really similar to how you've probably seen them elsewhere. Docs are similar to Google Docs, like a collaborative document that you can work on with anybody else who's a member of that site with you. File library, you could like, if you wanted to put a cat meme for everybody else to look at, you could drop it right in there in the file library. Or if you were like a administrator of a committee project, maybe you have you keep some meeting minutes in here. I've seen this used a lot of different ways. You also have access to a calendar. Some people use this if you have like a standing meeting time. This kind of thing can be really useful to build inside the group that you're working in. The calendar, you can sync it to, I believe, like iCal, Outlook, Google Calendar, if that's something that you are interested in. If you have events that you want to schedule out, you can always use the calendar function. And you can set up notifications so that people who are members of your group get an email if you make a new event, that kind of thing. That's up to you. You can also manage the group member roles. I am in the same area. I'm in the profile, but I clicked down into the membership section. This is, if I were in the live site, I could hover over each of these people and some more options would pop up being like, do you want to kick this person out of the group? Do you want to make this person an administrator? What do you want to do? You have to be careful with kicking people out because they are kicked out. Bye-bye. So you have to be a little conservative with that tool. But if you wanted to change somebody's role on the site and you wanted to give them administrator access, you could do that right from here. You can also manually invite new members from the membership area, and you can also control what kinds of notification settings you're getting. If you're getting too many emails, this is where you want to go. Okay. One other big cool thing about the OpenLab is it's, for the most part, what we call open source. There's varying definitions of what exactly this means. Open source can mean open code, like the original code of the site, of the tool, of the software is fully open. I could go and look at it and even modify it if I wanted to. That's not quite the level we're talking about, but WordPress is open source in that it is available to everyone for free. You can pay for more access to it. We do that so you don't have to. And because WordPress runs so much of the internet, 30%, that's right, about 30%. It can be really helpful to just spend some time in the interface of WordPress because content management systems are all kind of similar. So once you get used to one, then it can be a little bit easier to kind of translate that knowledge to something else. It also doesn't hurt to know a little bit about how to make your own website, a little bit. With WordPress, you don't need to learn how to code. You don't need to worry about that kind of thing. If you are interested in that, if like customizing with CSS, you can go that additional step and get into it, but you don't have to do that. There's a lot of built-in tools that will do that kind of thing for you. So no need to enroll in like a coding class in order to make an OpenLab site. Not yet. Let's talk timeline. We did get our procurement request approved this month. Very exciting. Yay, yay. We're hoping to launch the development site, which would be like the preliminary site where we can kind of play around with stuff, get some early adopters in to start setting up some test sites so we can play around once we have the installation ready. That'll probably happen into spring, summer. And we're really hoping to have the OpenLab be available by the fall. Not like maybe probably not the beginning of the fall semester. That makes me nervous to say that. But fall semester. We're being optimistic. I think there's a lot of energy for this kind of project right now. A lot of folks that want to connect more than they feel able to, just from what I've heard talking to folks at SPS. So I'm hoping to use some of that energy to carry us forward. That's really all I got today. So I would love to know what questions, concerns, feedback you have. I am going to stop recording because I think it'd be awkward to record anything else. Thank you so much for coming to my talk, Karen.